Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting a few seconds for folks to join us. Again, welcome. I am Tad Ferris, Senior Counsel at the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, or IGSD. It's my very great pleasure to connect with all of you online. I am serving as the moderator for this side event. Note for the side event, a few housekeeping issues. Only panelists have the microphone function, so please put your questions in the chat box so that we can consolidate and address during the Q&A session or if needed as follow-up to this side event. So for this session and beyond, I'm going to ask you with my fellow panelists that you all consider the brilliance of the Montreal Protocol community's success in phasing out ozone depleting and climate harmful technologies. We're also going to ask you to consider how, after individuals or groups of countries or individual countries make the decision to phase out such technologies, we can help ensure that certain countries do not bear undue economic, health, and environmental harms, increased treaty compliance hurdles, and other burdens resulting from the exports of such products. So joining me on the panel today is Kofi Agyarko. Kofi is the Director for the Renewable Energy Efficiency and Climate Change group at the Ghana Energy Commission. Kofi also chairs the Cool Coalition Working Group on Used Cooling Product Imports into Africa. Further, we welcome Rebecca Schloeman, Senior Associate for the Climate, and her colleague, Ana Maria Carreño, Senior Manager for Climate, both at CLASP. We also have the pleasure of welcoming to our panel my colleague, Dr. Gabrielle Dreyfus, Senior Scientist at IGSD. And I'll also note for the participants that after I present a brief introduction, Rebecca will present her most recent analytical findings from the CLASP study conducted in collaboration with IGSD on the issue of environmentally harmful product dumping of certain cooling products in Africa. Kofi will then present his personal experience and perspective as a pioneer championing interventions to stop such dumping, followed with Gabby providing us with key takeaways and action items associated with the environmentally harmful dumping issue. We will then have time for questions and answers, and I will note that we also have at the end of the slide deck useful references for participants to review, and the slide deck, I will note, will also be made available to attendees following the event. So with that, if I can ask Trina, our host, to shift to the slide deck, and particularly slide 2. Thank you. So to begin, a bit of background. Some of you may have participated in our side event back at the Quito meeting of the parties in Ecuador, where we introduced the concept of environmentally harmful product dumping, or short form environmental dumping. At that event, we noted, but it's worth reviewing here, that this environmental dumping is the practice of exporting to another country or territory products that, 1, contain hazardous substances, 2, have environmental performance that is lower than is in the interest of consumers, or that is contrary to the interests of the local and global commons, and or undermine the ability of the importing country to fulfill international environmental treaty commitments. Next slide, please. I'd also note that environmental dumping is not new to the Montreal Protocol regime. Recall, for example, for those that were involved or for those that would like this reminder, Vietnam's success in stopping the dumping of products containing ozone-depleting substances that led to the Vietnam Leadership Pledge in 1995. Also recall the wisdom of the Montreal Protocol trade provisions, which prevent parties from shifting their ozone-depleting substance operations to non-parties. Also recall Thailand's import restrictions on refrigerators using CFCs. So with these little bookmarks for our memory, collective memory, I would like to shift now to Rebecca from CLASP to present the findings of her study on environmental dumping in Africa. Rebecca, thank you.
Thank you, Tad. So I would like to present the findings of our recent study, Environmentally Harmful Dumping of Inefficient and Obsolete Room Air Conditioners in Africa. And this study, if you want further information after this event, you can find on our website, clasp.ngo, and also on IGSD's website as well. But if we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. Yes, so let's dig in. So we conducted a study of room air conditioners sold in Africa in 2018. Approximately 2.8 million air conditioners were sold in Africa in 2018. Our study focused on 10 countries that represent the vast majority of those sales. And what we observed, one of the chief findings of this study, is that high GWP refrigerants, including R22 and R410A, are still very prevalent in the African room air conditioner market. And what you can see in these charts that I've put here, one shows the compressor type of a lot of the air conditioners found on the market, and the other chart shows the refrigerant type. What we see with respect to compressor type is that the fixed speed compressors, which tend to be found in less efficient equipment, and particularly in equipment that uses R22 and R410A refrigerant, is still very common. So this is an obsolete, relatively obsolete technology that is coming in from other countries, sometimes as a fully assembled product, but sometimes just as a component. And when we look at refrigerant type, we see that R22 and R410A make up the vast majority of the refrigerant used in room air conditioners in Africa. And one of the trends that we've discovered is that while the market is shifting away from R22 in some countries like Kenya, the R22 units that are phased out are being replaced by R410A units, which obviously is a concern because of the high GWP of R410A and R22. We're not really getting that emissions reduction benefit from the transition right now, and not seeing a lot of R32 coming in outside of South Africa, which has higher standards. We can go to the next slide. For the purposes of our study, we had to create a definition for a low efficiency unit. And so what we defined as low efficiency is an air conditioner with an energy efficiency ratio of less than 3.0 watts per watt. We selected this this level because it is just below kind of all of the standards in all of the major exporting countries like Thailand, China, the US, South Korea. So all of these countries that produce air conditioners and sell them to Africa have significantly higher standards, but 3.0 was a nice threshold. It's also close to the MEPS level in a number of African countries. And what you can see from this chart is that there is a range of equipment available in a lot of these economies. However, the average efficiency level is just 3.04 watts per watt, and 35% of all room air conditioner sales fall beneath that 3.0 level that we've defined as low efficiency. And, you know, this is concerning because the components for most of these units are, there are better options for these products. Yeah, so can we go to the next slide? I started talking about the trade issue. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little more about the sources of these low efficiency room ACs. As I mentioned, a lot of them are coming from abroad. However, there is a significant portion that is assembled within the African continent, primarily in Egypt, Nigeria, and Algeria. So while there are 26% of these low efficiency room ACs are imported from countries like China, Japan, South Korea, and the US, that is an obvious case of dumping. But what we've found through our study is that dumping is also occurring less directly through the assembly of low efficiency units using components and refrigerants that come from abroad. So essentially, we have a small share of products that are produced by African companies, and a large portion of the locally assembled products are produced by joint ventures between African companies and the major AC manufacturing companies. And they are the ones providing the components for these products that ultimately do not perform as well as the products that are sold in other markets. And so this is a case of dumping, but it is a case of dumping that is a little different. It's not that every product coming into the market is fully assembled and inefficient. It's that, you know, the market has moved to bringing in the components for inefficient products. If we can go to the next slide. So based off of our study, which has a lot more findings, so I definitely encourage you to explore the full study if you can, we developed a number of recommendations. The first recommendation is to ratify the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol and adopt implementing policies. And these recommendations are targeted for the countries themselves and for the governors of those countries. And it's pretty obvious that they should ratify the Kigali Amendment, but the rest of these recommendations are a bit more specific. So our second recommendation is to design and implement MEPS and labeling policies consistent with major countries of export. Doing this would help to eliminate the issue of having local assembly of products using outdated components from major AC manufacturing countries like China, the US, South Korea, and Japan, but essentially force those manufacturers to start sending the components for higher efficiency products to African assemblers. Our third recommendation is to strengthen institutional arrangements. We just need to, make sure these policies are being implemented effectively, that there's coordination between government agencies. Our fourth recommendation is to revise room AC tariffs and trade measures to ensure compatibility with energy efficiency goals. I mentioned that there's a lot of local assembly in Nigeria, Algeria, and Egypt. In all three of these countries, there are tax and trade measures in place to encourage the local production of room air conditioners. And so there's just a move needs to be made to make sure that these trade measures are not contradicting or going against the goals related to efficiency and climate policy. Our fifth recommendation is, which I'm sure Kofi will go into in great depth as well, is to ban the import of secondhand products, including refurbished and inefficient room ACs, and to widely publicize and enforce that ban. Bans can be very effective. I won't speak too much on that, as Kofi, I'm sure, will. Our sixth recommendation is to organize bulk purchase and buyers club to reduce the cost of higher efficiency racks. Cost is always an issue, and one of the ways that we can help move markets in Africa towards higher efficiency products is through these types of programs. Seventh recommendation is to properly recycle and dispose of obsolete room ACs. Obviously, with refrigerants, we really need to look at the full life cycle impacts, and proper disposal is part of that. And right now, there's not a lot of resources for that in Africa. Our eighth recommendation was to elevate solutions to the regional level, taking advantage of opportunities for collaboration. There are a lot of regional organizations that can really help to create almost regional standards for these products, and that can be really helpful and can accelerate the transition. And our last recommendation was to engage local groups profiting from trade in obsolete equipment to be part of the solution. We don't want to put the local assemblers out of business necessarily. We need to involve everyone in finding a solution that will work for Africa. With that, I'd like to end my presentation. We can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I have the great honor now of reintroducing actually our partner and colleague, Kofi Agyarko, to present his slides and to lead us to next steps. Thank you. Kofi?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ted and Rebecca, for putting the discussion in proper context. It makes my work an easy one. Environmental dumping is real, and it is a kind of canker that is trying to erase all the enviable gains that a country like Ghana has chalked over the years in the energy efficiency space. In spite of all the, please, the slide, the next slide. In spite of all the investments that Ghana has made in human, material, and cash in the development of MEPs, regulations, enforcement, unfortunately, Accra, the capital town of Ghana, is adjudged the #1 toxic spot on the globe. And that spot is located in Accra, and it is called Aboblushi. It has achieved a notorious destination, all because of dumping. In fact, it is sad to note that Scientific American, volume 175, authored by David Bielo and January 1, 2014, crowned Accra as the dirtiest spot on the globe. I think this is a very serious issue that all right-thinking people around the globe should come together and help find a solution. The dumping menace that confronts Ghana is seen in two ways. The first one is shipping of used, old, discarded, obsolete, and energy inefficient products that are laden with environmentally hazardous refrigerants like CFCs. These products are discarded in Europe. They are picked freely and shipped to Ghana, sold cheaply on the market. They have short life. Because of the fact that they have short lives, the running cost is beyond the means of the buyer. So you find them littered in street corners. And these are picked by scavengers to the final resting place, that is Aboblushi, the notorious Aboblushi, the graveyard where the metals are crudely salvaged, and then the gas escapes onto the atmosphere. In fact, what is very alarming is the fraudulent description of this waste as reusable material or product. I want to leave the judgment to my audience. The photograph that you see, the top right corner, the photograph was taken at Ghana's #1 seaport, Tema. That photograph was not taken from Aboblushi. It was taken from the seaport. And how on earth can somebody describe this as reusable product? Completely, it's a junk, it's waste that is trying to find a resting place. And some people in their right thinking think that Africa, and for that matter, Ghana, is the right place to dump these things. Worried about these developments, the Energy Commission caused a prohibition law to be passed in 2008. The law actually kicked in 2013. We did that just to appease the individuals who ply in this obnoxious trade. And even after 2013, the countries that are shipping these toxic materials to Ghana have failed to recognize that Ghana says, I don't want this in my country. And they keep shipping the refuse to Ghana for it to be dumped here on us. And I think this is unacceptable. By all standards, this is unacceptable. It is injustice to mankind that you can find anywhere. So this is the first aspect of the dumping, the ugly face. Now I'm taking you to the second aspect, the next slide, which is the new appliances. I'm saying new, but put the new in inverted commas, because it cannot be described as new by all standards. The so-called new appliances that come to Ghana can best be described as not all that glitters is gold. You find them as new, but some of them do not measure up to the minimum entry point of our standards. And some also do not actually carry the approved refrigerants. And through our enforcement, robust enforcement regime, we are able to identify these products and return them to countries of origin. Now, I have a few questions to pose. Not to you, my audience, but a very rhetorical question. Number one, how on earth can a new, so-called new product that is laden with obsolete refrigerants be shipped to a country to be used so that the local people are perpetually condemned to poverty because of, number one, the running costs, and then number two, the effect on the environment? You're talking about health here. The second question that I'm asking is that how can these global companies and their home countries be respected when they exploit markets with products that they will not sell to their own citizens, products that their own citizens will reject? Why should it occur to them that they should ship it to another jurisdiction? The next question is, what makes it so difficult for global cooperation to stop the shipping of products that condemn local users to poverty and diseases? What is so difficult for all nations to come together to stop this canker? In fact, this dumping madness must stop. And we are recruiting patriots. And I want to appeal to you to rise up and be counted. We need collaborators to stop this dumping menace because it is absolutely unacceptable by all standards. I am happy that Vietnam has managed to succeed in reversing their situation. Thailand has made equally good strides. It tells me that the situation in Ghana is not completely lost. Something can be worked around it. And we want all hands to be put on deck to help us to fight and win this war because it is not good for mankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kofi, for the call to action. Kofi describes an urgent environmental justice issue, but I want to turn to my colleague, Gabby Dreyfus, Dr. Gabrielle Dreyfus, to leave us with some key takeaways before we move to question and answer. Gabby?
Thank you, Tad, and thank you, Kofi and Rebecca. Always inspiring, and even if the truth is ugly, has an ugly face. Thanks to the work of Kofi and others, there is positive developments in terms of gaining international attention to this issue of environmental dumping. Recently, the task force for the G20, the T20, issued a policy brief on enhancing voluntary collaboration on cooling through the G20, which included its recommendation number 7 on enhancing trade and technology transfer in high efficiency products and supporting the design of anti-dumping policies in developing countries to prohibit the import of inefficient and obsolete technologies, both new and used, from G20 countries. This builds on the declaration from the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, Decision 17.1, which included a note to urge parties to the Montreal Protocol to adopt an action plan preventing market penetration of obsolete equipment in Africa, while facilitating access to secure and energy efficient technologies on the continent. Next slide, please. So while these are positive developments, as Kofi has reminded us, it is not purely the responsibility of countries that are receiving this environmentally harmful dumping to act. It requires both, there are steps that countries can take, as noted by Rebecca, to strengthen standards, in particular minimum energy performance standards, and others related to refrigerants and gases controlled under the Montreal Protocol. It's worth noting that while there are many drivers of environmental dumping, it is absolutely critical that the sources of these obsolete products, both the used obsolete products and the new obsolete products and components, recognize their role in this problem. Next slide, please. Kofi spoke to some of the harms, in particular the high costs for communities and individuals, both from the economic impacts relating to higher energy costs for these inefficient equipment, the environmental costs, as well as health and social justice impacts. These types, these markets essentially suppress economic growth because of the high costs that are going to paying for essentially energy waste from people who really don't have the resources to afford that, costly repair, and essentially we see the abandonment of this waste. Next slide, please. And this money wasted is money that does not contribute to development. It is both at the individual level, but also the government level, as this essentially there's a shift of burden to the receiving countries to manage the enforcement and compliance. And the effects of these markets that are flooded with inefficient and low quality appliances is that it is more difficult to attract the newer and higher efficiency products into these markets. And so it's important to note that knowledge of this exploitation is the first step to recovery. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways that we want to leave you with today are that environmental dumping has and can be stopped, that this dumping damages the receiving country while generating profits for the exporters, that there are immediate economic benefits to stopping environmental dumping. The Kigali Amendment provides an opportunity to prevent environmental dumping as it facilitates the transition to both high GWP and efficient appliances. So the point is to go away from high GWP and inefficient to low GWP and efficient. There are 11 tools for preventing environmental dumping highlighted in the 2018 IGSD paper defining environmentally harmful dumping. Include interventions such as some of the tools described here, but one of the things that we do want to elevate here is this need to recognize that the burden is not just on the receiving countries, that exporting countries and exporters also have actions to take to resolve this wrong. And that by stopping environmentally dumping, there is the opportunity to harness maximum sustainable development benefits. Next slide, please. So just to reinforce the message that our countries at the receiving end of dumping can't solve this problem alone. But in order to be successful, institutions, individuals, and governments must collaborate to identify to the full extent the types of cooling equipment that are dumping, and that we need champions to pioneer environmental dumping interventions. Across the sectors, we need champions. And these collaborations have begun, and we would like to ask you to join us. Next slide, please. There are a number of references and resources that have been mentioned in this presentation, which again will be made available at the meeting website for side events. A few of them are listed here. Next slide, please. And with that, I would like to turn it back to Tad.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Kofi. We'll now turn to questions if there are any. Have you been monitoring so far, Gabby?
Yes, I have. And I encourage participants to put questions into the chat. I would like to pick up on the comment from Sueli Carvalho, who notes the work that has been working on with CLASP in Brazil. Rebecca or Maria, is there anything that you can tell us about some of the progress in Brazil, but some of the continuing challenges for shifting to low GWP and high efficiency equipment in Brazil?
Yeah, happy to, Gabby, and good that Sueli mentioned this. I think it highlights one of the tools in the toolkit that Rebecca and you mentioned that policymakers have in order to promote this transition to low GWP and high efficiency equipment and prevent dumping in their countries. In Brazil specifically, one of those tools is the labeling program. The label especially recognizes energy efficient equipment, For the case of room air conditioners, the label had not been revised in many, many years. It's a label that uses the categories from A to G. So A is the high efficient, G is the low efficient. And what we found in the market is that all the equipment was bearing the label A, the high efficiency category, which meant that, of course, it was very difficult to differentiate what were the most efficient products and what were the least efficient products. Working with the regulator in Metro, the Brazilian government revised the label recently. They improved the efficiency levels of the categories significantly. So now consumers and manufacturers will be able to differentiate the high efficiency products in the market. And this is great news for the transition as well.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Again, just to remind, here we go. There's one question that came in. Are exporting countries taking any action to reduce the export of low energy efficiency, high GWP appliances? Gabby, do you want to take that one?
So, sorry, did I hear someone else?
Kofi, did you want to speak?
Kofi, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. I think that the question is not reduction. We are asking for a total seizure of exporting these kind of waste to Africa and Ghana. If they are the most advanced nations who have what it takes to recycle them and make them very, very environmentally friendly. We do not have what it takes to do proper recycling here. So as much as possible, let their waste remain with them. We have gone ahead to pass the laws, and I think that they are obliged to respect our laws as a sovereign nation. This is not negotiable at all. It must stop. And the responsibility is theirs to ensure that they stop what they are doing, because they know that what they are doing is bad. They are just exploiting the loopholes in the various protocols to do what they are doing. How can it be reversed? Do you think that if the reverse was the case, would we even have time to sit here and discuss this? They would have stopped it one touch, that obsolete things are being shipped from Africa to Europe. That will not happen. Nobody will even dream that thing happening. So I think that this is sheer bullying, and it must stop, and it needs to stop.
Thank you, Kofi. I also noted that some folks are submitting questions to the Q&A section of the chat, so we'll need to monitor that as well as the chat section. One question, maybe Kofi, as a follow-up that you can consider is, how highly organized are the entities that are responsible for initiating these environmental dumping activities? Are companies doing this as a major business activity, or does this activity result more from opportunistic individuals and groups?
When it comes to shipping, that one I know, and I can tell you that certain opportunistic companies in UK are taking undue advantage of this obnoxious trade. That is a fact. We have record, we have figures, we have data on the company that is doing that. But when it comes to Ghana, we have individuals who have taken that as their major trade. and their livelihood. And that is where the enforcement becomes a little bit difficult for us. But I think that we have moved beyond that. Now, the major problem is the shippers. Once the shipping countries stop, we don't have much problem to deal with locally at all.
Thanks, Kofi. Does anyone else want to add on to that, or we can move to the next question?
I was just going to add to that, that when we're thinking about the new equipment that utilizes obsolete technologies, these companies are taking advantage of the lower, or in some cases, non-existent standards in a lot of African countries. So they are continuing to produce equipment that cannot be used for sale in the country of manufacture or the country of origin for the components used in products assembled in Africa. So they are taking advantage of that lack of standards, and they are doing that with knowingly. They are aware that the standards are lower in Africa and that they continue to sell obsolete equipment. So there is responsibility on those companies as well, who are capable and already producing higher efficiency equipment that uses low GWP refrigerants. They have a responsibility as well to not exacerbate the situation by perpetuating the production of these obsolete pieces of equipment.
Yeah,
Rebecca?
and to continue with that, Tad, Rebecca, you are on point. The enforcement team has had the unpleasant duty of returning a number of containers laden with so-called new fridges that were nowhere near the entry point as far as our MEPS is concerned. And the challenge here is that our borders are so porous. So if you reject something in Ghana and you don't track it very well, before you realize it has gone to your backyard, either Togo or Cote d'Ivoire, and it re-enters through the land borders. And that is a challenge for now. But the enforcement team are as wild as a wounded lion, manning the ports, and they make sure that these things don't find a way into the country at all, because we want to keep these lemons from our market.
I would like to share a successful story about removing some of the high GWP refrigerants from the market that happened in Kenya by using one of the tools in the policy toolkit. Kenya recently implemented energy efficiency standards for air conditioners, and we were tracking what was the situation before the standards were in place. A lot of the room air conditioners had the higher GWP R22 refrigerant in use, and they were also low efficiency units, as per Rebecca explained in the presentation, well below the 3.0 energy efficiency ratio that is defined as low efficiency. As soon as Kenya implemented the energy efficiency standards, the new products that were registered in the product registry that the regulatory handles, there was a significant improvement in energy efficiency. All the equipment had an ER well below the standard, and there was a transition to R14A. Now the issue is here, as Rebecca explained, we are seeing this happening in multiple markets where when R22 is phased down, a lot of the transition happens to R14A. So there needs to be a mechanism or a market push to shift to lower GWP refrigerants as well. But I think it's a great story because it shows that standards definitely can support the transition both to energy efficiency and lower GWP refrigerants as well.
Thank you, Ana Maria. We do have some more time for some comments and questions. One of the comments is to thank us for the presentations and studies and important calls for further action. To also note that in Ghana and Nigeria, KSEP has been supporting activities to complement MLF work for UNDP to work with governments to further strengthen enforcement of regulations and help reduce unwanted inefficient product entry. There's also a question, I guess it's part question, part comment, that parties having import licenses for equipment in place cite unaffordability of new energy efficient machines as the reason for granting license for importing low efficiency or secondhand equipment. National ozone unit officers need the tools to counter these claims. The question is, are there enough funds to propagate these tools to the parties?
Todd, can I answer that question?
Certainly.
Yes, absolutely. The affordability issue here doesn't arise. It doesn't arise. Ever since we started that rigid enforcement of the prohibition law, the supply of the old used inefficient fridges prices went up. And at a point, the difference was negligible. People patronize the used ones because of a certain mindset. People have swallowed an erroneous impression that used things are better, stronger than new things. I don't know where that thing comes from, but it is something that we are trying very hard to disabuse people's mind of that erroneous impression. So it is not the case of affordability. It is completely a mindset. If it was an affordability issue, then what happens to the running costs? Because anytime electricity tariffs are adjusted upwards, you see these very people who patronize the used products jumping onto the streets and making noise, protesting. So the question is why? So it is not a case of affordability. Availability is there. Affordability comparatively is good. It's a mindset that we need to change. Once we change that mindset, I think that we will be fine. That thing, affordability issue, is part of the propaganda that was infused into the system by those companies in Europe who ship these things to us, that you are poor, you can't afford the new one, so this is what you deserve, take it. It is unacceptable. It is never true. It's a propaganda that needs to be discarded.
Thank you, Kofi. Thank you very much. Ana Maria, you have a question in the chat. Do you see it, or do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, I see it. Thank you, Todd. So this is a question. I don't know if anyone can see the question. This is a question about examples of market campaigns addressing consumers to educate them on selecting and purchasing more efficient and lower GWP products. Yes, I am aware of these type of campaigns, and actually, again, the successful story is in Kenya. The energy label that was launched together with the standards was new. So when we went to the markets, especially the retailers and the consumers, and we asked them about the label, there was very low awareness about what the information was displayed on the table or what was the purpose of the label itself. In response to that, the energy regulator in Kenya decided to launch an awareness campaign for consumers. And this is a social media campaign using Twitter, using Facebook, using other channels, which is cost effective. I mean, it doesn't cost much, but they are able to reach a large group of consumers and just to educate them about the label. In Kenya specifically, the label uses the stars, and the more stars, more savings. So that's the slogan of the campaign. And it communicates the message very effectively, and it educates consumers about having this tool that allows them to compare the performance of products on the market. Unfortunately, there is no information on GWP in this label. And in general, energy efficiency labels don't provide information on refrigerants. So this is something that has to be explored further, and it would be interesting to see how best to communicate this to consumers. Because in general, consumers don't understand what this means, and I think further research is needed in order to see what would be effective tools of communicating this type of information to consumers.
May I follow up with another example? Oh, sorry, Kofi, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a second aspect of Mr. Bassam's question on the ozone unit and their ability to counter these claims and all that. Yeah, let me say that under the CASP, the Environmental Protection Agency in Ghana, the ozone unit, has embarked on a massive sensitization campaign. At a point in time, I found time to join the campaign, and they have started from the custom officers at the points of entry. They have toured the whole country, all the entry points, and that is where the sensitization has started from. And from time to time, they also meet certain targeted individuals and associations who deal directly with cooling appliances, especially the repairers, to educate them on the importance of going for refrigerants that are ozone and environmentally friendly. So that is also on course, except that you agree with me that you need a huge budget to do publicity, for that matter, change attitude. To change attitude, you need a whole lot of money to do that. But with the little that is at our disposal, I think we are doing the best that we can under the circumstances. Thank you.
So just to pick up on the previous question on campaigns as well, I wanted to highlight one that is working in Brazil right now, is a consumer-facing campaign around the Black Friday big consumer event. And it was a very clever campaign. I think this might have been last year, and it's being repeated this year, where it essentially asked consumers if they wanted their dream AC. And the dream AC is highly efficient, it has an inverter, and it's a real AC, except for as the consumer clicks through, they find out that this real AC is not available in Brazil. And so it's a way to, and it ends with inviting the consumer to send a letter to authorities in Brazil asking why, and how can we get such products into the market? And part of it has to do with essentially consumer demand for these products, but also an education that in markets that don't have, that are essentially flooded with poor products, it is difficult to get the higher products to be marketed. And so I think Brazil right now is focusing on a consumer awareness campaign to get more high efficiency inverter products into the market. Kofi, I did want to also turn back to you. I saw a question in the Q&A regarding how organized the importers are, in particular of the low efficiency or dumped equipment. And I know this is something that you worked directly on. Can you speak to the work that the Ghana government did with importers? You spoke to the repair side to help get them to identify supply lines for more efficient equipment.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I told you that the prohibition law was passed way back 2008. Enforcement kicked in 2013, 1st July. It's all for one reason: to adequately prepare those individuals who ply that trade to be able to shift their focus. So we did a lot for them. Number one, we reduce the transaction cost of dealing with them as individuals. So from our own resources, we brought them together to form an association with elected, recognized executives who we dealt with. Secondly, we assisted them to identify two brands of refrigerating appliances that from our own resources, we launched for them. It was done at the forecourt of the Energy Commission just to give it that touch of high efficiency, quality, and all that. We did that one for them. We hired a consultant to prepare a business plan for them because we wanted them to turn the association into a limited liability company and to get a strategic investor to partner them so that they can assemble refrigerating appliances here in Ghana. We went to the extent of granting them their request to sponsor two of the executives to wherever they wanted to go abroad to start talking about finding a strategic investor and bringing that person home to join hands and then start producing the appliances back home, because it has been so before. In the 60s and the 70s, there was a company in Ghana that produced refrigerating appliances. So it is not a new thing that can be done. So we have actually spent resources in straddling these people who ply this trade over the years. And I can tell you that many of them have changed their businesses, and where they used to sell the used appliances, today you go and find new fridges with labels properly fixed on them. And I think that that is the success that we have chalked as far as trying to change their business lifestyle is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Kofi. I think, folks, we have time for maybe another question. Gabby, did you see one that you wanted to raise?
Yeah, I was going to clarify, ask Kofi to clarify on the product bans, because we are speaking to clarify between the banning of the refrigerant gas. The bans that are in Ghana are actually bans related to the equipment. Could you speak a little bit more to those bans? And I believe there are also bans for the CFC phase out as well that are in place.
Are you directing this to Kofi, Gabby?
Yes, this was a question for Kofi to just help clarify.
Then Gabby, please rephrase it. The internet was a bit dodgy at that point.
Apologies. Could you clarify for the types of bans that Ghana has in place on both relating to CFC refrigerants and to used equipment?
Actually, Energy Commission and Environmental Protection Agency are at the forefront of this fight. Whilst the Energy Commission is looking at the product, the Environmental Protection Agency is also looking at the refrigerant. So we are moving hand in hand, and the Environmental Protection Agency has a national committee in place that is working at the phase down and then the phase out. So the two are moving in tandem. CFCs are being phased out, HCFCs are being phased down, and the environmentally friendly gases are now being popularized. People are being advised to use those ones instead of those that are being phased out and those that are being phased down. So that is how we are working together. There's that collaboration, and it's working very well.
Excellent. With that, we want to wrap this side event. We're at the 11 o'clock hour, but we are not finished with this issue. As participants have noted, as Kofi has led us. Yes?
Brad,
Do you want it?
sorry, I know you are winding up, but I'm left with one major appeal. So just 30 seconds. It is true that we are doing the best that we can, and a lot is coming from national budget. As I indicated, to change attitude calls for huge financial outlay. That is what is missing in the equation, and that is how come at certain points of the journey, you think that maybe we have relaxed. It is not relaxing per se, but when we run out of funds, then the problem comes up. We have to recruit more people to do the enforcement. We have to pump in money to do radio, TV, newspaper awareness creation. So I just want to launch an appeal that entities that have the financial without to be able to provide us with assistance when it comes to awareness creation, they are mostly welcome to join the crusade. That is the humble appeal I wanted to launch. Thank you for the time.
Kofi, thank you very much. That is an excellent wrap up for this discussion. This is not, as I mentioned, the end of this. We all need to collaborate to pitch in to help address this global issue that Kofi has put into great personal context, but that we all need to work hard to resolve for us, for our future generations, for the environment in general. Thank you, everyone. We will be recording and have taken note of any questions that were put either in the chat section or in the Q&A section, so that we can assess whether we need to follow up on any of these that we may not have had the time to do during this session. Again, the PowerPoint will be made available. We'll work with the Secretariat to post that. And we look forward to hopefully soon meet with you again to collaborate in person on this issue. Thank you very much, everyone.